To follow along this tutorial, go to this repository and clone this. And put the branch called starter and open that with VS Code. We have to install the dependencies. In the starter project, I haven't installed any third-party libraries. These are all we get from the Create React app. I did not eject them. I'm planning to use email for data manipulation. We will install it here. Okay, let's start. npm start. So this is the starter app we have. In order to give a short overview, we have a navbar with the number of items in the cart. Right now it is populated wrongly, but the count of products, the cart items in the cart will be displayed here. Let me just show you why this 12 coming from. I need to see that also somewhere. Okay, so let's have a walkthrough and then we'll see component by component. So this is the navbar, which is this guy, which prints this React context API example, and then we have a couple of icon buttons where for some reason I gave like the default value of item count as 12, so we don't have to. It should be 0 if nothing is coming from the parent. Now it's gone. That's about the app bar, and then we have the products component, which gets a list of products and it maps through them and creates product cards. These are product cards right now. This guy is getting 21 cards, and the component is mapping through them and printing them. Let's go see the product card component. This has, as you can see, two typographies and then an action button called add to cart. Two typographies and then add to cart. And we have the cart here, cart, which gets the cards, which works completely similar to how the products component works. This cart component gets a list of cart items, it maps through it and prints it, creates a list of cards. So the card, it's not visible here. We will see it in a bit. It also has two typographies and one button called remove to remove the cart item from the cart. So that's pretty much it. For sake of demonstration simplicity, I put both the product and the cart side by side so that we can see how the data is being transmitted between the components. This pay button is also a separate component. Just for demonstration, it just gets the amount to pay and it prints it. So for example, if you click an add cart component, this number has to increment. An item should show between this cart title and the button. That should be an item, and then the pay zero must increase, and they should come from one source of truth. In a traditional application, it gets really hard. Whenever something happens like this, we need to get access to the DOM elements this element, and then we need to create an element in between. We directly work with the DOM elements, we get access to them, and then we modify them. And then Angular and the single page application, the web application frameworks like Angular, React simplify the process where the DOM elements are just linked or synced with the data we have in the components, and they update themselves. So it gets much simple when we just deal with data. We update this array, and then the number of elements will change. We update the number here, the data, just data here, and then the element will just update itself. But one small problem is, even though React is reactive in nature and the UI elements are reacting to the data changes, that gets complicated too when the application grows to size of hundreds of components and they need to be in sync. We need a global state. So in this tutorial we are going to see how to have a global store where from which these components, this cart icon, this pay button, and then the cart component reacts to a global state change. So that is much more simpler and robust. That's what we're going to see. Let's get started. So these are the steps we are going to do in order to implement context state management for this web app. So we are going to create and export context provider and global context. This provider is actually a React function component. React component, we are going to use this to wrap the whole application, so that all the children, the components will get access to the context, the global store. So we need to create a context folder and context provider. We need to import React because the context provider is actually a React component. So some initial state, just going to take the products, an array, and cart items. So now we are going to use a method from React called create context. So this is the global context. Create context of which gets the initial state, and we can actually export this. We can destructure the provider from the global context, and let's export a default function, which is actually export a default React component. We're going to make use of the provider we created above, and as it's going to wrap the whole app, we are going to get children and we're going to put inside and to return this. Okay, so usually a provider will pass a prop call value which contains the state. So let's generate the state. We're going to use a hook called use reducer, which gets the reducer. As the reducer is just a function which gets the state and the action to be done over the state. The action can be like an add product, delete product, add cart item. It can be anything. It can be like delete the fourth element in an array. So it can be anything. So bare minimum, this is a bare minimum state which gets the state and also the action, and it returns back a new state. That's what a reducer is. We are not going to use init, and we are passing the initial state. So this gets called, the reducer gets called whenever we dispatch an action. So this guy, we'll do that one by one. For now, as you can see, we have exported the global context. We have to import the user reducer hook. We'll just grab the app. To test if it is working, we are going to access the data, I mean this data from one of the components. Let's do it from the products. We have to import the global context, and you can use context and to pass the context inside that. Let's just log it. Use context not defined. Okay, use context, and then we have logged it. Let's go refresh the page. And products line number 9, we have logged in. So this is what we get: the state, products, cart item. And instead of logging like this, we can actually go inside. We can install the Chrome React developer tools Chrome extension. We can search the components, and inside the hooks we have the context, and in the state we can see this stuff. So just to test, let's add something else here. And the products component will have this. So we created, exported the context provider and global context. We've wrapped the application. We now can access the live data from the global context. So this accessing data is pretty simple, right? So we get this use context, we import this use context, and we use that context. We use the global context to get this one. So it's not necessary to have only one context, but for this example, we are going to use only one context with both these values. We can have any number of contexts. If you have two contexts, then while returning, we can like have a nested providers. We are going to have two providers, right? We are going to have two providers. We can nest them, and that will just work. And each provider is going to have one global context. That's what we have imported here, and we are using here. Yeah. So now we can have any data here. In order to access the data, the global store, from any component, we are going to use context, and we import the global context, and we can access that. It's that simple. Let's create the first action. Fetch products, which won't get anything. We are going to hit the API from here, and we are going to dispatch an action. And before that, let's clean up a bit. We can create a reducer file and export default. Import that here. So that cleans that up a bit. We need to import the database, is the API call to, which is inside DB. I think it is called get products. This function. So you have to call that results equal to this an async function. And we are going to dispatch an action. Dispatch takes an action. The action by convention takes a type, which is just a string, to just differentiate between the actions. and a payload. The payload is the results we got back. And this dispatch, if you remember, this dispatch is given by this use reducer. So this dispatch, whatever we put here, when we call the dispatch, it's going to reach the reducer. Let's quickly test that. So instead of just returning the state, we're going to use a switch statement. The key is going to be the action dot type. The action is the object we passed, and we have something called type, which needs to be maintained, which is a discipline which is not enforced. As you can see, we can change this, but that's what project use this, so we use this. And the case, we look for fetch products, and if it is the case, we're going to return products action payload. And let's pass this as action. And within the products, so right now we are getting all these 21 products as props. We don't need that. In the app, we don't have to send this. Right now we are fetching this thing from inside a use effect hook, which runs only when the app starts, app mounts. We don't need this stuff. We don't have to pass this also. So inside the products, we have access to the context, which can be destructured to state, because we know what we have. So we are just deconstructing this, exactly the state and then the action. And we are going to use the effect hook, and the effect is actually calling the action, where we don't have to clean this up, and we need to run that only in the beginning. If you don't specify any input type here, it's going to run and it's going to act like component it mount. I think we are good to go. Let's just see. Use effect is not defined. Okay. Also, the product is not defined. It's just looking for the products here. What we have to do is we have to destructure the products from here, because that's how we have structured our state. State is going to have a product here. We can delete this one. Now it is working. Is it working? It is working. Now the good part is, when you look at the products component, and inside the context we have the state and the products are coming. So we successfully created an action here. We passed that, we called that, and we hit the reducer also. The reducer returned the new state, and we are displaying that. We are going to get caught item as a parameter here, and we are going to just dispatch. Type is add to caught item, or add to caught, and the payload is the caught item. Let's do the same for the remove from cart. Remove from cart. Cart item ID. Payload is cart item ID. or okay, yeah, that's fine. So we're going to do the reduces for these two in a bit. Remove from card. Okay, now the reduces part. So here we are looking for another. Okay, let's create a constants file for this, as we are reusing these strings. And for the reducer, let's use an npm package called immer, which allows us to deal with this immutable data as if they are mutable. So immer provides a function called produce. Let's do the add to cart. Produce takes the first parameter. We are going to pass the whole state as the first parameter, and it is going to give us a draft state. So here we are going to access the produce products array, and we are going to push the action.payload, which is a whole actually it's not products but the cart items, this array. So we're accessing the cart items array and we're just pushing that. So this produce will take care of keeping the immutability. But what we are basically doing is we are just accessing the array and we're just pushing. It's much simpler than actually doing like this, like spreading the all state, and then it's much simpler. Let's also do the remove from cart, and here we are going to use filter. So it's much simpler this way. We are just pushing an item here, and then we are filtering the filter will return another new array, and we are doing this. Let's run it. Before that, we need to hook these methods. For example, let's do this add cart, which is inside the product cart. So this here we are going to use an on click. And here we can destructure the actions, and then here it is actually add to cart. Okay, the product is passing the title and price separately, but we want the product here, so we have to go back. Product card, not like this, but the product, this product. We got the product, and here we need to change this to product dot, and we have to pass this here. On click with the capital C. Sorry. Let's see what it is doing. Send the product. Now in the product card, now we have access to the state and actions. Now actually the cart item is an empty array. and as you can see, while clicking, the global state is getting populated. Now even from the products, this products component, we can see that the state cart item is updated. So the add to cart is working. Let's check the remove from cart. Oh, okay. So before that, we need to populate the cart. So what's happening with the cart? Here we are going to do the same thing again. We need to use this use context global provider. Let's quickly do that. Here we need the remove from cart, and here in the here actually we are passing we are not using the action here but the state and cart items. So instead of we are right now getting it from its parent, which is not necessary, we are going to use this cart items here, which is already being used. Let's see. Yeah, it's working, right? So it's passing is we get from the global context, we pass the cart items array, we map them, and we pass the cart item into the cart, which actually destructures. What are we sending here? Okay, we don't have to send this. We have to just send cart item equal to cart item, and in the card we have to get this and cart item dot title, cart item dot price. Okay, it's working again, and let's quickly do the same thing in these two components, this cart number of items in the cart component and then this pay. Let's do the same thing again. Here we need the length of the cart items array. We don't need this anymore. We get the cart items and the badge item count. Let's pass cart items dot length. It is 0, and then when we start clicking, it increments. Let's do the same for the pay button. Which actually needs the sum of all these prices in the cart. So we need the cart items. See here, we don't need to have dot reduce item ACC plus, let's call this total plus item dot price. Okay, no initial value. Let's pass 0 here. Okay, so it is 0, and oh,
Okay, so it is in sense I have a util function for that. 1 minute. Sends to dollars. Pay button. Yeah, now it's working, and we don't need the dollar as the util function provides its own dollar sign. So it is working. Now let's implement the remove button from here. It's not working right now. For that, we need to close everything. It's very annoying. And open the cart. In the remove button, we are going to again destructure. Let's do an on click here. And we have to pass the card item.id. That's what the reducer is looking for. Remove from card, and then the reducer remove from card is looking for just the payload. Okay, so it should work now. Add a couple of products. Remove. Okay. And the changes, we are just playing around with the data. We are just modifying, working with the data, and everybody just works. The pay button, he is reducing the sum of all the prices into a number where he is displaying. So we have this bug here. We cannot have two items. We are passing the ID of this product as the key for this list item here. It is giving us some problems. We can like manage that. We can have count here, number of this units of this product and everything here, but that's not completely relevant to context. Just to wrap this up, we are going to just allow only one entry in the cart. Let's do it. In the product cart, we are going to disable this button and change the string. Change the string if it is already there in the cart. So for that, cart items, let's destructure cart items from the state. In cart equal to dot find index of item.id equal to product.id, and I want this to be a boolean, which is simpler to use. If it is not there, it's going to return -1. So if it is less than 0, let's use this disabled. Oh, okay. So in cart, yeah, it is in cart. Okay, it is greater than or equal to 0, and then so this guy is not in cart. I'm actually thinking about the grammar in cart. Yeah, if it is greater or is equal to zero, it's going to the index is, if the index is greater or equal to zero, it is in cart. And yeah, we are going to make it disabled if it is in cart. And also let's change the string here. If it is in cart, or it's going to be add to cart. So it updates. And a beautiful thing is that everybody is listening to the one global source of truth. So if I remove this from here, this state will change, and so on. This number is changing, the pay is changing, so everybody is changing. For a simple app maybe of this sort, the setting up the state management and linking this stuff, basically whatever we have inside this folder, the constants, the reducers, this setup may feel a bit overwhelming in the beginning, but once it is ready, that helps in while scaling the application. We don't have to worry about, we can just implement, we can just plug, we can just create any component here, and we can just plug the global state into it, and we can just start listening to it. And I want to finish this with by talking about currying. I want to take this away to a separate file. So let's copy this. Export everything. So we need this get imports and the constants. Now we are good to go. So actually we are going to make this function as a function returning another function. We are going to do that by introducing this. So this is a higher order function, a function returning another function. Where, let's go to the example and come back here. This is the function. So it's going to give 6. So this is actually equivalent to, let's say, function func2, which returns another function. This is A, this is B, and we are going to console log A plus B. Func2, maybe 12, 23. So this is actually a function returning another function. And the currying, when we talk about currying, we can say that add to 12, add to 12, okay, add to 12 equal to func of 12. And now add to 12, if we call with 15, it's going to give 25. sorry, 27, my bad. So the use case of this currying is when we have these two arguments in two different places, then that's very helpful. That's what we are going to do here. So we made these functions, our actions, into a function returning another function. We are going to get the dispatch from the provider. So here we have dispatch. As you can see, we are not using dispatch anywhere else. It's just inside this context folder. So the guys outside in the components have only two things to do. One is they get the state and they get the actions. Maybe we should have named these actions. Okay, state and actions. The state is read only. They get the states, they can display them, and the action, they can import these actions whenever they want to do some action. It could be add to cart or anything, even login, etc., etc. Every action the user should do, or we're going to display make this available in every component here, and they don't have to worry about anything else. So it gets abstracted away, all these implementation details. So our actions are ready. Now let's do it here. So here I'm going to have a const action. This is an object. We need to import the actions first. So the add to cart dispatch. And you're going to just pass the action. So what we're doing here is this need not be the same as maybe this is confusing to name the same name both function with the same name. This can be anything. Add to cart, exported. This can be anything, but this is the name the components are going to access. But it is good to have them with the same name, but you have to understand that this add to cart is the one we have imported, and this will give us, when we call it once, as you can see, when we call it, function should be called invoked by two sets of parentheses. We have to call it twice. When we call it once, the argument we provide here will be the first argument. So that's what we are doing here. We invoke it once so that we can pass the dispatch here. We can have the dispatch here, and this is given to the next guy. So this function is this. We invoked it once, and this can be invoked with, for example, in the add to cart example, we need a cart item, right? So actually action dot add to cart of some cart item. So this can be invoked once again with the cart item, and that cart item will be taken here. This is the next function. We invoke it once, we pass a dispatch here, and then we pass this function to the components, and the components can pass cart item here, and in this case it is cart item ID. So we are using the currying to clean this up. You can delete this, and let's see if it should work now. Fetch product is not defined. and everything is working now. So just to summarize, we created and exported the context provider and the global context. We can name this anything we want. Um, but the context is a React component which we exported here, and we use that to wrap the whole app so that all the components inside wrapped inside the context provider will get access to the context. And the global context, we created it here. It's very simple. This stage, it used to be difficult before the introduction of these hooks. The user is use context. Now it's very simple. We get this create context method. We just create the context and export it. And the consumers of our context use the hook use context, and they can import the global context, and they can access the live data which is reactive to. So we created that, we wrapped that, we access the live data, we created actions, and also we wrapped this. Also we used currying to make this file clean, so that we can keep creating new actions. We can even have an actions folder and have actions according to the resource they are dealing with. We can import all the actions and can put it. In this here, the reducer, we are just using one reducer, but actually we can create more reducers and combine them in Redux. There we usually created different reducer for different resources, and we combine them. I'm not sure if they have a combined reducer in context, but there are workarounds to combine the resource reducers into one. So this allows us to create the actions and reduces. This folder is self-contained folder. Whatever comes out of this folder are data and actions. So that's pretty clean. So yeah, that's all. Let's take everything, finish the remaining actions and wrap it out. Thank you. See you later.